I'm looking up when I see them looking down on me. Staying committed when they all choose not to believe. Cause the man in the mirror's giving me words to receive. Why not me? Oh, why not me? How they even doubt me or overlook me, tell me how. They don't know my story or anything that I'm about. Even at rock bottom, I lift my head up and yell out. Why not me? Oh, why not me? Cause I'm right here, and no, I'm not counting myself out. I'm getting there, even if I gotta make my own route. Need me to lead, then follow me. Gotta go through them, then let it be. Cause why not me? Oh, why not me? See the pain on your face speaks loud enough, I can hear it too. No, they've never seen or ever felt what you've been through. Might sound like a question, but it's some words to get through. Why not you? Oh, why not you? And doesn't mean that you're lost when they say nothing's guaranteed. Only means there's a bigger chance for you to succeed. All you've gotta do is look in the mirror and believe. Why not you? Oh, why not you? Cause I'm right here, and no, I'm not counting myself out. I'm getting there, even if I gotta make my own route. Need me to lead, then follow me. Gotta go through them, then let it be. Cause why not you? Oh, why not you? It's time to turn this thing around. Be strong and carry on. Believe and hold on. It's true, some will win and some will lose. But when you give it all, you're the winner overall. Don't miss a second, cause it goes on without you. Believe it or not, fear is afraid of you too. Cause the mirror on the wall only gives you one point of view.
Hello, my name is Marsha Bonner, and I am a Senior Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Human Resources Professional with MRW Consulting Group International LLC. We are thrilled to collaborate with Richard E. Pelzer II and Mark M.K. on his Artist Prep series, Mogul in the Making. Both are founding members of the DEI Collective. Celebrating New York City Design Week, Harlem 2020 and Good Things presents Footprint, Design and Creativity in Sneaker Culture, observing the cultural, societal, and aesthetic impact of the sneaker through interactive storytelling, demonstrations, and conversations with leaders from creative and business industries. This special presentation will include a week of virtual events, outdoor experiences, select tours along with other small gatherings, highlighting Harlem's talented design community. Now, in its 9th year, New York City Design is a collaboration between the City of New York and a steering committee comprised of design institutions, retailers, manufacturers, entrepreneurs, curators, educators, editors, and designers to promote and spotlight one of the world's largest design hubs, a city that's home to almost 8,000 design establishments and 53,000 design professionals. New York City is also the home to 10 of the most prominent design and architectural schools in the country. And a special part of the upcoming celebration is the inclusion of graduate student events, giving the next generation of designers and exciting opportunity of exposure. We are confident that today's panel discussion focused on what does diversity look like in sneaker culture in the future will be both informative and insightful, offering you valuable information as you seek to advance your diversity efforts. The DEI Collective understands the challenges you might be facing in helping others appreciate the benefits of inclusivity across all areas of their lives. We get it. And that is why we are so committed and passionate about the work that we do. As you listen to today's panelists, I encourage you to seriously consider the DEI Collective as a viable partner that could offer you the support you need. We would welcome the opportunity to speak with you. So please feel free to contact MRW's DEI Collective at 201-210-8932, or you can visit our website at www.mrwconsulting.com to learn more about us and our work and how we can help you. We look forward to hearing from you soon. In the interim, please enjoy today's program. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Artist Prep, our very first series here on Create Labs. I'm singer-songwriter and your boy, Markham K. And I love telling stories, man. I love writing music that tells stories. I love telling stories in the music I create for films and the brands. And I love hearing other people's stories too, even though it may get a little spicy sometimes. Allegedly, now, in one story, there's a story about Beyonce having the opportunity to work with Reebok. And she actually turned that opportunity down, allegedly, because nobody on the team that Reebok provided to her to work with happened to look like her. And we all heard about Mr. West, Mr. Kanye West, Yeezy. We heard his battle cries, and I'm yelling, how? How, Sway? How can we change the narrative and create a more diverse fashion sneaker design world? Great question. I mean, this even proven stories that companies with above average diversity management produce higher revenue than companies with less. Now that's something big. In today's story, we ask, what does diversity look like in future in sneaker culture? What does it look like in sneaker culture and design? What does it look like for minorities? What does it look like? That's the story that we're telling today. And we invited some special guests, some friends of mine, some cool people. I'm not going to go into them yet, though, because I want to say a couple of thank yous to Create Labs, Abram. I want to thank Grady Spivey. I want to thank the MRW Consulting Group DEI Collective. I want to thank Miss Donna Drake from CBS WLNY Studios every Saturday, 6 a.m. for allowing me to use the studio here today. And I want to thank y'all tuning in, because y'all could have been anywhere else with your good-looking selves. But what? Where you at? You right here with us. So big thank you to you. So we want to go into our guests. We have some cool guests. We have T Strong, we have Durell Cooper, and a good friend of mine, Patricia Robinson. Instead of me going into it, though, I'm gonna let them explain themselves who they are and what they do. It's pretty dope. So check it out. I'm Markham K, and this is Artist Prep. Welcome, everybody. I had to look at y'all for a second because y'all looking really good over there. Y'all looking really good. I mean, like, wait a minute, I was checking the room out for a second. We're going to start off with T Strong, CEO of Dirty Souls Footwear Group, who's also an author and public speaker. T Strong, if I may, can I ask you to introduce yourself to the room?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. I'm T Strong. I don't even really know where to start because I do so many things and I've got a lot of jobs going on these days. But what you can see behind me, I'm right now in my sneaker store called Studio Soul here in Newark, New Jersey. So I have to always big up Newark because that's my family. And so, we have this consignment that is sneaker consignment, but really what it is a sneaker academy. So as you were talking about diversity in the sneaker culture and how do we begin to, see it develop more towards who we are and our ability to be able to capitalize on our culture. My husband and I decided to create a sneaker, all things sneaker. And so
Cool.
we have this class that we teach, and it runs for 8 weeks. It's been really successful so far, and we have learned a lot from our students. They are super creative, but the really important thing for us is to teach them how to capitalize on their own culture, because all these other companies are doing it, and it's their culture. So they should know as much about the industry as possible. And that's really the goal. So that's one of the jobs.
I have a question for you, T Strong. Now, I've met a lot of women in the industry. When they come up with a footwear line, it's usually about women's shoes, heels. What made you decide to make a career out of sneakers? I'm curious.
I've been a sneakerhead my whole life. I think my first pair of sneakers are Reebok 5411s, and I had them in multiple colors, and that was just really the thing in the 80s. And so I just always really loved the ability to take a shoe and show my style and kind of how my day is going. Like, that's the way I look at sneakers. It's really life for me. And so I met my husband at North Carolina A&T State University, Ed.D. Pride. Congrats to all the graduates there. And he's a sneakerhead too, so for me, it was like, okay, this is a perfect combination. So I worked in the fashion industry for a little over 20 years. I've worked for tons of different brands, everybody from Nautica to Calvin Klein. I remember being the only one who looked like me a lot of times. And, that whole industry in itself, I feel that we are the ones who create this trend, and we kind of, sort of determine what's going to be cool. And, so for us, it's second nature. And so, it was important that I take all of that knowledge that I amassed over those 20 years and bring them back to my community. And my husband felt the same way. He was on the footwear side of the business while I was in fashion. And so collectively, it just made sense for us to do it because we've been doing it for other people for so long. The it that I'm referring to now is manufacturing. So manufacturing is really kind of how we got started. And so our class really teaches everything from the design process to the manufacturing process.
Pretty dope. Now, being that it is design week, I gotta ask, what kind of sneakers you wearing?
Right now, do you want me to take it off? I can show it to you.
Yeah. Do you?
Not one of the ones that I created, but it matched today. So
Ooh, I'm liking that. I'm liking that.
Thank you. As much as we teach entrepreneurship to our students, because we feel like that's very important, as entrepreneurs ourselves, there's nothing wrong with buying other brands. The point of this whole thing is really not for us to say, you shouldn't buy the big brands, and I'm not going to go into who they all are, but we know what we're really saying is, there's opportunities everywhere up and down the spectrum. If you love a particular brand that much and you want to go work with them, let us help you give the tools, for you to be able to intelligently about the industry and, know the different parts of a shoe and why those things are important when you get down to the factory connections and that sort of thing. But we're also saying you could do it yourself also, so there's no, there's your choice. We want to just be able to give more choices.
That's dope. T-Strong, that's dope. I want to introduce our next guest, Mr. Durell Cooper, founder and CEO of the Cultural Innovation Group. And I want to ask you a question. Tell us about DCLA and about your background. Mr. Cooper, take the floor.
Thank you so much. Yes, my name is Dr. Durell Cooper. I'm the founder and CEO of Cultural Innovation Group, which is a boutique consulting company anchored in New York City. Just for those, I go by he, him pronouns, and I'm coming in today on the occupied land of the Lenape people So I do want to lift that up, also known as Midtown Manhattan. And for those who might be blind or low vision and watching this, I am a Black man wearing a black hat with black headphones and a black shirt. And in my background is a modern art piece with black dots on a beige piece of paper. So I enter this work. I consider myself to be an intersectional scholar. I am a hip hop educator by training and also by scholarship. And I'm also a certified arts teacher as well. And so, and a recovering hip hopaholic. Also, I definitely have my time like with a hip hop group and stuff like that. My background and experience, I used to work with the Department of Cultural Affairs here in the city of New York. And as part of my responsibilities as a program officer, it was to look at creative ways to be able to fund arts and cultural organizations within the city of New York. I also worked at Lincoln Center Education for a number of years on different social impact programs, really looking at ways of increasing access for young people in the city to arts and arts education. Now, I am an adjunct instructor at both the City College of New York, where I actually do teach a hip hop course, and also at New York University, where I teach courses on intersectionality. And so, yeah, I'm also a writer. I write about hip hop as well, especially hip hop pedagogy, even more specifically. And I'm really blessed to be on this panel today with Patricia and with T Strong and with you, Mark, our host with the most. I mean, this is a very humbling experience.
Well, thank you for blessing us with your presence, and I'm glad that you mentioned doctor. I left it up to you to say that because I think you may want to tell the room you just became a doctor this week, right? Correct me if I'm wrong now.
Thank you. Yes, it happened.
Thank you for doing
it. It happened on Monday of this week. So,
congratulations. Our next guest is a dear friend of mine. She keeps it fresh, like along with everybody else in this room. I met her fresh. You know it's real when you meet somebody looking fresh from the start. Miss Patricia Robinson, also known as Miss Pat. If you're allowed to call her Miss Pat, by the way, you know what I'm saying?
That's awesome.
Also known as Miss Pat, Human Resources Community Advocate and Director for the Know Your Rights Camp. Patricia Robinson, please introduce yourself to the room.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me. I'm super honored to be sitting on this panel and just being able to contribute in what I think is just a very important conversation. So I'm Pat Robinson. My background is that I've worked in radio and broadcast for about 20 years. I also actively teach as an adjunct professor of speech and communication, and I serve as director of community outreach for Colin Kaepernick and have been doing that for about 4 years. So I am very much involved in the aspect of business, especially as an HR professional, but really connected into community advocacy. And the reason why this is exciting for me today is because I am a person that believes in fashion and how we influence and we control and move money, and really interested in learning how we can better grow and own. And I just feel like the sneaker community is already a culture, right? That's an exact culture. I myself, a person that wears high heels, but over the last couple of years in particular, I experiment with fashion, and, fashion is not our only avenue of leisure and fitness. Like, it's an affirmation statement for many. So I'm really excited to be a part of this conversation today.
Excited to have you too. With that being said, I have a question for the room so we get this started. In your own opinions, do you believe inclusion groups are effective in sneaker culture? And if you do feel like they are effective, tell us why. I'll start with you, T Strong.
My mic is muted. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you now. T Strong.
Do I feel like inclusion groups work in the sneaker industry? That was the first question, right?
Yeah.
I think that inclusion groups in general can work. I think it's really imperative to understand what the goals are on the outset of that, though, and make sure that those you are trying to serve are a part of that conversation. But as it relates to sneakers, because of those who are currently in control, and I say that with, you know, the utmost respect for these companies who have been in you know, existence for 20, 30, 40 years. However, you have to grow with the time. And, you know, I think that there's not a lot of people who look like me, look like us in those rooms who will be able to make those decisions. And so with that, I feel that yes, they can be you know, very, very useful. But at the current, I don't necessarily see that being the case. And I believe there was a second part of that.
Well, if you felt like that they were effective, why? Why would you feel like they're effective or not?
I think, you know, it would be effective if there were folks who really were able to make the decisions, who keep their feet on the ground. You know, that's one of the reasons why my company is called Dirty Souls. The whole reason for that, and I have to remind people all the time that it's not SOULS, it's SOLES, like the bottom of your shoe. The point of it is that, you know, I can always tell if you're doing the work or not, because the soles of your feet should be dirty. If you're in the community, your hands should be dirty, you should be really out there, and not just walking the walk, but, you know, not just talking the talk, but definitely walking the walk. And we saw a lot of that with corporations coming out, making statements, you know, different things that, you know, the sneaker industry and the hip and, you know, just us in general, we're kind of like, yeah, we don't believe it, because at this point in the game, I need to see the action. You know, no longer are we okay with just, you know, whatever this statement is or whatever the CEO signed the petition of, you know, no, those things don't work anymore.
Great answer. Mr. Dr. Durell Cooper, what are your thoughts on that? Do you believe inclusion groups are effective in sneaker culture? And if you do believe so, why?
I think they have potential for sure. Whenever you can sort of start to get a group of people together to start talking about these issues, there's a possibility for change. I think ultimately, I definitely agree with what T. Strong is saying. At the end of the day, you know, James Baldwin has a quote, I have a hard time believing what you say, but because I'm looking at what it is that you're doing. So, you know, a lot of these companies did start putting out all of these solidarity statements last year around the uprising of the Black Lives Matter resurgence in direct response to the murder of George Floyd. But, you know, Dr. Terry Watson has a saying for what she was seeing around that time, and she called it performative wokeness, which I believe is so apt to what it was that we were seeing. At the end of the day, yes, these inclusion groups can work, you know, but at the end of the day, you know, when you start talking about these tables, you know, who at the end of the day is having the decision-making power at these tables? And to even take that a step further, some of these tables that we're asking to have seats at really need to be flipped over. And some of them need to be burned down, and some of them need to be, you know, so we really have to think about which tables we're at. When you start talking about inclusion, you know, it's a tricky question, because the question is, what is it that we're being included into? And so it's really starting to look at it and go, are these spaces that we even need to be pushing into, or is it just time for us to start creating our own tables and our own lanes in these spaces? I don't think that that's always the answer. You know, Thurgood Marshall was definitely in the Supreme Court running the inside game, while Malcolm and Martin were out in the street. You know, Fannie Lou Hamer, Shirley Chisholm, you know, they were out in the streets kind of doing their thing, you know, making this movement happen. And so we do need a combination of both. But whenever we start talking about inclusion, it's like, inclusion for who and inclusion for what? because diversity for diversity's sake is only a tip of the iceberg. The real sort of goal that we're trying to get to is liberation. These are just, bridges on the way to there. So yeah, if you're going to include me, what do do you have supports in place to make sure that I'm going to be successful once I'm there at your organization and at this table?
Wow, that was great.
Yeah.
Miss Patricia Robinson, I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I follow my colleagues here, and especially in particular what Dr. Cooper said, because it all becomes a performative action, right? So we're at these tables, we're having the discussions, because I think that corporations have become a little bit more wiser about how they manifest their initiatives. So it's more than just the mission statement that resides on the corporate websites, but now people are pulling the curtains behind and saying, what's really behind that curtain? So it's really lucrative for some companies to say, oh no, but we have African Americans on our leadership, right? But if we are even included, right, then we have to be able to have effective dialogue and then break it down categorically. Gender inclusivity, right? Removing away the narrative that women cannot be a certain thing or cannot fit a certain scope of what the sneaker industry represents. Sometimes you'll see patronizing gender signifiers where sneakers for women are faint colors, floral colors, where you will see other sneakers for men are just very base colors, neutral, high design. So there's a level of things that we can talk about. So ideally, the inclusivity is a North Star. Is it factualized today? I don't think so. It is something that we are all talking about. It is a hot topic. If you were to Google anything on the internet with the words inclusion, diversity, equity, I mean, you could be reading for days, but it's really what have you done to put things into practice? And I too am a firm believer that we just have to start really getting to a space to understand the power of influence that we have. We create, we design, we purchase, but we don't own. That's a problem. So hopefully we can get to the place that we need to get.
Yeah, I'm with you. Sounds like a case of what you've done for us lately. I like that, Miss Pat. I have another interesting question I want to ask the room real quick. Some sneaker industry employees are saying they need more than social media posts and donations from celebrities. So with that said, should some of these artists, some of these basketball players, these superstar athletes, should they be held accountable for not creating more diversity awareness when they're making millions of dollars from these companies and these employees are like in the battlefield, in the trenches? Should they be held accountable?
I'll jump into that one really quickly because that's debatable, right? But you have to recognize that we live in a society where we idolize people based on the assets that they accumulate. Most of I won't say all, but there are a lot of celebrities that are really into things for self-preservation. They accumulate wealth so that they can have it for their own generational wealth, right? And they'll do the surface things that will check off your checklist in reference to the donations that we expect them to have. But again, I go back to us having the power. If we collectively stand together, if we collectively work together to become smarter in business, create spaces in which we can create the things that we go and purchase that have no value. Like, for example, I went to Nordstrom's the other day because I knew I was about to do this panel, and I just looked at the prices of the sneakers, and it just really shocked me. And I don't want to call out any brands, but some of those sneakers in there were like $800. And I just said to myself, probably the material on this sneaker wouldn't even make it probably past $25, $30, but we sell those for $800. And where we go wrong as a community is that we love fashionable things. We absolutely should, and we wear them well. And it's because of the fact that we wear them in our cultural stance that makes it popular, right? But we have to learn the art of doing business. So for me, it's about understanding, how does business really work? Let's get behind the business of business. And I think that's an opportunity for us.
And I absolutely have to chime in at this point, because that is the thing that frustrated my husband and I for so very long. It's like our community does not understand that we are what makes the shoes fly, not the shoe. The shoe means absolutely nothing, if we don't wear it and we don't give it something, give it this life and our culture, it doesn't mean anything. And, you're exactly right, Miss Pat. At the end of the day, we have no power and control over that. And I think that was done on purpose. There was a day when there were a lot of urban clothing lines. I'm sure you all remember that. And what happened to them? We all know the backstory of what happened to them. And so, that's what we can't do with the sneaker culture. We have to figure it out, So for us, my husband and I take the time to really share what that looks like. Everybody thinks they can design a shoe, but it's not the same as clothing. You're sending your shoe off to a different country, and you're having someone in China create that, or in Italy, or wherever they may be. And now you're talking about customs. And now you're talking about agents, so these are all of the things that we cover in our course, because even if you don't have the money to do it, if you have the knowledge to do it and you really want to do it, you'll figure out how to do it, So that's our whole purpose. And if we don't have that piece of it, as Ms. Pat is saying, when we don't have that piece of it, the business piece of it, it's just a dream, that you can't realize. And so for us, the art of shoemaking is the first step to that.
I just would love to ask Dr. Cooper, and just in keeping in line with what T. Strong said, but we also have to foster the next generation to be creators, right? And one of the things that often troubles me is that we have public school systems that don't even have arts in their curriculum. They don't have a space to be creative. But this is our next generation. So how do we bridge that gap? So I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. First of all, let me say I am definitely in the presence of legends today with Miss Pat and T. Strong and Mark. Kind of going back to also to like the original question, I'll try to bridge both of these things. But like this idea of should artists, be responsible, be held accountable. First of all, if it's not something that organically this artist feels like, this is how they want to use their platform and engage it, then, I'm speaking from the I and me personally, then don't do it. If it's not an organic thing that is coming up from you, because for me, if your liberation is not bound together with mine, then I don't need or want your advocacy or your solidarity or your allyship. Right? Because allyship, again, is something that's very performative. Now, if you want to be an accomplice with it, or if you want to be a co-conspirator in my liberation, then that's okay. But if you don't feel like, and that's where this idea of intersectionality originally came from with Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw. She was looking at, it wasn't quite a Black issue, because, Black people were able to make strides in the workplace. It wasn't quite a woman's issue because women were starting to make strides in the workplace. But Black women were starting to get pushed down by corporate America, and nobody had a word to really be able to talk about what was being experienced. And so, again, if your liberation is not bound to mine, and we know the troublesome history that hip hop has had with Black feminist politics, and the way in which hip hop has treated women. And so, if your liberation is not bound with mine, then what I don't need is for someone else to come along and perform as if you care about my freedom. So if you don't, then keep it to yourself. Keep making the music that you want to make, and I will find your vibe is going to attract your tribe. So I will find those who are willing to walk this road, this movement to freedom with me. And Ms. Pat, thank you so much for bringing the education piece into it too. So my specialty is like hip hop pedagogy. I really believe that hip hop can be a movement towards liberation within the classroom, especially when you start to think about abolitionist principles. The beautiful thing about hip hop and entrepreneurship is definitely one of the tenets of hip hop culture. the beautiful thing about hip hop is the level of freedom and creativity that it allows a person to have. And regardless of what it is that your skill set is, whether it's the ability to speak, improvisationally on the mic, whether it's your skills as a graffiti artist, whether it's your skill as a break dancer, being able to break, shout out to breaking, making it into the Olympics. Like, who knew hip hop would make it this far? You know what I mean? So, regardless of that skill set, what we see in schools is that it's not honoring this sort of intuitional or ancestral wisdom that young Black kids have innately by being a part of this hip hop generation, and in doing that, Dr. Bettina Love has this, she calls it spirit murdering. So you're having these students, these Black students going into these white supremacist school spaces, not seeing themselves represented. And honestly, it really still connects right back to what we're talking about with corporate America, even specifically, we're speaking of sneaker culture, but it connects even to corporate America larger, because it's all fruit from this same, poisonous white supremacy tree that's trickled down. And schools are not neutral. Obviously, corporate workplaces are not neutral. Institutions of higher learning are not neutral. Government is not neutral. They're all complicit in the systemic problem that is happening. But to Miss Pat's point, we're doing this work we are never going to see the liberation that we are fighting for, right? The work that we're doing today is supposed to ripple down generations later for them to really see it. So the reason why I can call myself Dr. Cooper today is because of all the abolition, is because of the Harriet Tubmans that have came before me. It's because of the Frederick Douglasses that have came before me, the Nat Turners that have came before me. So I can now be able to call myself Dr. Cooper through that work, but it wouldn't be possible if my ancestors didn't put in the work. So now this is our cross to bear at this time, to do the work for the next generation. And again, we may not get there with them, but hopefully we can make enough of an impact in what we have today using the tools of today with social media, which is a very powerful tool, to be able to move towards liberation. So, generations later, they may look back and go, wow, now we have this opportunity to be here. Because without a doubt, let me just get in there before I finish, without a doubt, not only is the future Black, but the present and the past has also been Black. And I think what we're seeing now is an awakening of us being able to see ourselves without the necessity of the white gaze to be able to define who we are as a people. We're seeing ourselves in a brand new light. And I just know that the future is Black. We are destined for that. And so
I'm sorry. This conversation is so good. But before you ask your next question, everything that I'm hearing, this kind of conversation, this authentic, raw conversation, although created for this space, is the kind of conversations that should be welcomed to the corporations, welcomed to the table, and not viewed as threatening, volatile, a takeover, right, but real dialogue. And I'll bet you what, if they invited and accepted this kind of conversation, the products that we see on the market would probably fail. They probably would have a next level of products and sneakers and things that are marketed that really have significant meaning that could do so much more better in our economy. And that's all I want to say.
And I'm sorry, I just have to throw something else in there, because, when we first started teaching this class, shout out to Weequahic High School in Newark, because that's where we started. And, we taught this class and we thought, well, the kids are probably going to, come up with something like, I don't know, a little weird, and we're going to need to fix it. And, of course, we're adults. We've been doing this for 20 years. So we think that, we're going to know. We get in the class and I am blown away by the ideas that they have. The things that they're thinking about are beyond. I mean, it is literally next level stuff. And so I'm like, okay, if you can imagine that and I can teach you how to actually make that a real thing, that's my life's work. That's my life's work. And that's, to me, the whole purpose for why I am here and why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because, and then to take it a step further when we had a couple of 10-year-olds in a recent class that we did with Newark Parks and Recreation. Shout out to them as well. We get so much support in the city, so we love it. But like, they're 10. And the things that they came up with, we're like, oh, we're probably gonna need to help them a whole bunch, and you know, and they catch on so fast. And I'm thinking to myself, if you're into design and all these kids are into sneakers, this is the thing that brings them together. Doesn't matter what they look like, they can have any kind of conversation about sneakers because this is just it's like music almost. And so, you know, the creativity of that and being able to do that with both of those age groups at the same time was just even more mind-blowing, because we've always been taught, you know, separately. And I do think that there are some things that we had to tone down a little bit for them, just to, you know, just in layman's terms. But essentially the concepts were the same. You know, their level of creativity was encouraged in the same way, and they thrived. I mean, you know, I can't wait to share with you guys on our Instagram page, and we haven't put it out yet because we haven't had our certificate ceremony, which is coming up. But the designs are just truly amazing. And if we can catch them in, you know, middle school or even elementary school with just that interest, that then becomes a bigger thing as they get older, you know, and it's everything to me. So I'm with my tribe. This conversation is amazing.
You know, I want to say this, right? There's this thing in the music industry, and I think in entertainment in general. People like to give donations, and they don't want to acknowledge that they gave the donation. They want to stay behind the scenes and stuff like that. But I think that needs to change, because, you know, there's some people out there that's doing some great things. Not to take away from what they're doing, but we need more. I definitely believe we need more. I'm from Suffolk, Long Island, and I could go on about how many legendary rappers and artists came out of Long Island, and current rappers too. But when I go to these schools, and I'm glad, Miss Pat, you brought up the arts as far as schooling. When I go to these schools and I see who's teaching, you know, music or dance and all these other, you know, great, you know, features of art. Like I mentioned earlier with Beyonce, but the team not looking like her. I don't see these teachers looking like me for these kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I jumped in and I said, you know what, let me start working with some of these schools like East End Arts and create a more diverse, you know, situation with them by teaming up with iZotope. iZotope is one of the leading brands in recording gear, and they're helping me out to, you know, try change that narrative and create more diverse teaching lessons for these kids. Going into music recording, teaching them hip hop. We just want to make it a more diverse atmosphere as far as the arts. And I'm just coming from an independent, you know, artist standpoint. I really truly believe that artists, athletes, and celebrities in general, they have huge platforms and huge voices, and they could be doing a bit more instead of, you know, trying to play the cool end and, oh, I did that, don't tell nobody that I did it. I think we need more than that, and I think, you know, time needs to, you know, the narrative needs to change. So that's my take on it. But I love what everybody said, man. Y'all had some great points, you know, taking in all this knowledge. I want to go into this real quick. With so much crime and shootings happening, what kind of support would you like to see some of these sneaker brands offer our communities? They're making money off of our communities, but are they helping as far as like crime? You know, like, you know, we've always heard about somebody getting, you know, harmed or killed, shot for a Jordan sneaker. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that? Please, anybody jump in.
Yeah, I mean, you know, one thing about our culture is that we're loyal, we're dedicated to fashion, right? So we will show up and we will buy things that are very impressive to us and things that are trending. There are a lot of opportunities that are low effort but high impact that organizations could really, you know, do to support. There are a lot of cure violence programs in local communities that can be supported. There are a lot of mentorships that can be created. You know, they could even partner with local communities. You know, over COVID-19, a lot of the local communities had enrollment issues because of everything that was going on. But the job is really being able to connect to our young people's potential. And so that's not going to be in teaching the skill set teaching and, you know, teaching them how to design and dance. And that's one thing. But what we have to support each other is we have to, when we have the opportunity, is really connect into young people and help them understand their potential and help them to believe in themselves with nothing, right? And that they are everything. They don't have to have the assets, but they can believe the value within themselves. And I believe that we all have the power to do that. It's free. We have the time to do it. It's just, are we committed to doing that? As said, I teach college and I teach a multitude. I teach 2 classes actively while I'm working. And I go above and beyond my curriculum of teaching speech and communication because I feel like that's my opportunity. I got 28 souls in front of me. I'm going to tap into every ounce of what I can pull out of them to really make them believe that they are important and they are of value. So I think that 2 things. I think there's an opportunity to support local programs that are, again, some of the people may not have time to commit, that are low effort, but really high impact, cure violence programs, mentorship opportunities, and really creating opportunities to put financial subsidies in lower increments if that's what works, but really some kind of substantial financial increments into our schools to support the arts and cultures programs, to support things like, the digital divide that is a big suffrage across the tri-state and probably across the country. So those are the things I would recommend.
Dr. Durell Cooper, I'd like your thoughts on that.
First of all, Miss Pat is a genius. Absolutely. I agree with everything she just said. The only thing I would add to that is, Brian Stevenson talks about this idea of being proximate to the person in order to understand. And I think that's what's so brilliant about Dirty Souls at T. Strong's company, because, you have to be willing to get in the dirt. And so if these corporations, if these companies are willing to do that, to get proximate to young people, to get proximate to elders, and go to the communities and ask them the ways in which that they could help out. Ask them the ways in which they see themselves being used within those communities. They have to get comfortable with the discomfort of leaving their ivory towers and actually opening up ears to those who are requesting or looking for these services, if that's what it is that they're interested in doing. Also, to lift up what Ms. Pat said, shout out to Kay Bain, who runs an incredible cure violence program out of Queensville. What we find is that when you allow the communities to come together to talk about and to strategize for themselves, because they are the experts in their own experience. So when you allow these communities to come around, and then they will come to Adidas when they're ready. Oftentimes they will come to Nike when they're ready. Now, the question is going to be whether Adidas, Nike, Reebok, are you going to listen when they come? When they see how you can fit into their dream, they are going to let you know. Obviously, reach out and see, but you should keep an open ear to what it is that they are requesting when they do request it.
And I love all of your points. Oh my gosh, they were just, I could not have said them any better, honestly. And but to add to that, we have to give corporations a reason. If they don't have a reason to do it, if you're going to buy it whether they do or buy it whether they don't, as a business owner, you have to really think about your bottom line. If you were them, would you do it just out of moral, just because that's what your parents taught you? At the end of the day, everybody has bills, and there's bills in the priorities. And, one thing as an entrepreneur I learned is that no one cares as much about your business as you do. So if you're not the one who's really thinking about that and saying, okay, like we are at Dirty Souls, is really important to us to say to ourselves, okay, how much of our time do we need to give back to this community or this particular thing to try to help the next generation? We are doing manufacturing now, but we're kind of the only people that I know of, look like us that are doing it. And so what we do is we have, people who look like you. We have attorneys come in to speak with our class. These are special guest speakers who just give up their time because they want to come in and show kids themselves, because we might have somebody who comes in with locks, and we got somebody else who's, an artist, and we've got another person who's clean cut, and, there's all these different people that they need to see who look like them, who are actively doing this work in this, industry. And I always tell them, any job that you can think of, it's going to be in that industry. If you want to be in the sneaker industry, it is so very easy for you to take your passion and put that within the industry, because so many people are touching that shoe from the time it's designed to the time the consumer gets it. Your job could fit it easily into any one of those positions.
I just want to jump in, T Strong, and just say, I dare to say that our Black and brown communities hold our Black-owned businesses more accountable than we do our corporations.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We will scrutinize you to the T, right? We will give us a reason not to spend that dollar there on our Black and brown businesses, but those corporations will dole it out, and we have to do better in that area. And I just wanted to put that out there.
I have the perfect question to give you too, based on what you just said, Ms. Pat. I have to ask you guys this question. That was powerful. Stephon Marbury created the Starberry sneaker, and people said it was too cheap.
I bought 3 pairs.
I see you smiling. Stephon Marbury created the Starberry sneaker, and people said it was too cheap. LeVar Ball created the Big Baller brand, and people said it was too expensive. Do we support our own enough when it comes to sneaker culture?
When it comes to everything, all I can say is, who taught you to hate yourself?
Wow.
I mean, seriously, if you're supporting anything else, anything, it should be that. Whether you like them, whether you don't, it doesn't matter. Gift them away, but help the people that look like you. There's no harm in that. It's almost like we think that somebody's going to get ahead of us, or, I don't even know if it's that anymore. It is just so ingrained that we almost have to reteach ourselves how to support one another and what that should actually look like. And don't be mistaken, what you think it looks like is not what the next person thinks it looks like. It's not what the next person thinks it looks like, because everybody has their specific need. And once you're able to recognize that and be able to say to yourself, it doesn't matter. If God blessed me, let me just bless the next person. It's like paying for somebody's meal behind you in the drive-thru. It's simple. Just do it.
Mm-hmm. So I just want to add this, because I know Dr. Cooper has to leave soon, but I often liken to look at how concert businesses work with our hip hop concerts, especially having come from that arena. We could throw a concert, 50,000 people. Each individual will spend an average of about $150 a ticket, right? And so we'll fill a stadium. And if you think about the revenue that the organization is making, they're making millions, right? So we got all these thousands of Black and brown young people enjoying this concert, each that invested $150 each. And what they've done there is they've made millions for the corporation, and then they go back home to their communities and they have nothing, and they have nothing built. And if they could just flip the lens and say, boy, if we just stuck together, if we put all of our money together in our communities, what a change we could make. That's my point.
Wow.
Brilliant. The only thing I'll add to that, I think T Strong hit the nail right on the head on that one. Just because my color does not mean that you are my kind. And so that's why I said that thing earlier about vibe attracting your tribe. Your liberation in this piece really does have to be bound up with mine, and the way in which you're viewing moving forward, and whatever this movement is going to be towards liberation, because all of our liberation does not look the same. It does not. And we don't all have the same skill set to help us get there. But when you start to piece together these different individuals that complement what it is about you that you're trying to do, that is where the magic happens.
Wow, very powerful points. Well, If anybody wants to jump in the room and share anything that you have coming up or anything about Design Week and Sneaker Week, feel free before we close out.
I guess I'll just throw in there that we are starting a new sneaker design class, the Art of Shoemaking, again with the city of Newark this week. And you can find more information about that on our website, which is dirtysoulsunlimited.com. Also studio-soul, SOLE.com. And, you know, I really just want to encourage everybody, you know, whatever skill set you have, especially if it's something within a design, a fashion, you know, a sneaker culture, since we're talking about that today, please share that with the young, you know, the young up and coming creatives, because what I'm learning as I'm doing this work is that creativity is not being encouraged, you know. And just to add to what Ms. Pat was saying about the education piece of it all, and Dr. Cooper, it's really been interesting and heartbreaking in some ways to see that is not being in our young children. You know, everything is about testing and, you know, whatever is coming up now with COVID and where those funds are going to be spent. You know, ask the children what they want to do too. They're people, you know, and I think as adults, sometimes we forget that. We think that we know what's best for them in every way. And it's like, no, you have to take time to talk to the kids and really understand what they're interested in, you know, and you'll learn a lot about what they would like to do. And once they're doing things that they love, that I want to see kids who love school. A lot of kids don't love going to school. They were okay, you know, being home. And some kids are thriving in that way, but others just don't want to go back because they weren't feeling, you know, encouraged. And I just find that there's a lot that we can do, you know, and it doesn't have to be very much, but there's a lot that we can do at the same time to be able to encourage that.
I think we popped out a little bit. I think we're back. Okay.
But you want to leave the room with anything?
Yeah, I'm going to keep it nice and light. Ladies, do not be afraid to wear your Converses with your skirts. You can put on socks if you want. You don't have to. Just don't walk around with no ashy legs, but be cute, do you. And you don't need permission from nobody. So whatever you want to do, put them Converses on, put your Nikes on with your dress and your suit, and go about your business. Do you. Thank you.
Mr. Dr. Durell Cooper.
Yeah, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to keep it light. You know, authenticity, knowledge of self. There's just as much tenets of hip hop culture as the music is. And so, you know, I would say love yourself and don't be afraid to be an original. And if it's somebody that you really admire, don't be afraid to remix their genius.
Oh, that was nice. That was nice. Listen, I want to thank you all for joining us. T Strong, Dr. Durell Cooper, Patricia Robinson. I really do. Thank y'all. Appreciate y'all for joining us on our first episode of Artist Prep here on Create Labs. It's been a pleasure. You've given so much fruitful information, and I hope everybody in there enjoyed it just as much as I did. Big shout out to everybody that helped us make this happen. Richard, I see you. Grady Spivey, congratulations on becoming Vice President of Trilla. Yeah, I had to shout it out, Grady. I'm sorry. Big shout out to Abram. Abram, you're so great, man, for helping us make this happen. God bless everybody, and good night. I'm Mark MK. Peace.
Again, my name is Marsha Bonner, and I am a Senior Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Human Resources Professional with MRW Consulting Group International, LLC. Wow, what an absolutely amazing conversation about diversity in the sneaker industry. And we trust that you gained some valuable insight, the importance of advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion in your environments. On behalf of the MRW DEI Collective, I want to thank our moderator, Mark MK, and our panelists, Ms. Patricia Robinson, T. Strong, and Dr. Durell Cooper for participating and offering their thoughts into today's discussion. What does diversity look like in sneaker culture in the future? The information shared with you today, powerful. And now is the time to make your move to start or advance your DEI efforts. I encourage you once again to contact MRW's DEI Collective today at 201-210-8932 or visit our website at www.mrwconsulting.com. We're stepping into the solution, and we know that's exactly what you want to do. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you again for joining us today.
Why not you? Doesn't mean that you're lost when they say nothing's guaranteed. Only means there's a bigger chance for you to succeed. All you've gotta do is look in the mirror and believe. Why not you? Oh, why not you? 'Cause I'm right here.
Let me tell you, my first sneaker love was Pro Keds. Who didn't want a pair of Pro Keds? Pro Keds were so awesome when I was a younger person. And so Pro Keds was my first sneaker moment because I was able to, back in the days, and hopefully this won't date me, but I was able to wear my Pro Keds with my Coca-Cola clothing. Now, how many of you remember that? Coca-Cola clothing with Pro Keds.
Okay, so my first sneaker for sure was Reebok 5411s. I had them in a whole bunch of different colors because as a fashion girl, I was all about having the variety. But I will say my sneaker moment really was my first pair of sneakers that my husband bought me. Before he was my husband, of course, he was my boyfriend. And so he bought me these Adidas. And I really had not ever been an Adidas fan, but that was his thing. And so, you know, it always, whenever I buy Adidas or I think about Adidas, it makes me think about him. So that's my.
What was my first sneaker love or earliest sneaker moment? I think the first sneaker I fell in love with was definitely a pair of Jordans when I was in the 4th grade. Everybody kind of knows this pair. They were iconic. They were low top, white with the patent leather black strip going around them. I thought those were the dopest shoes that I ever seen in my life.
Hey, what's up? It's your boy Markham K. And my favorite sneaker moment, it had to be when I had my first pair of Diodoras. Yeah, we going back, retro back. Diodoras. They had the peel off Velcro on the tongue. Woo! Couldn't see me. In the green and white. Yeah, I was looking tight fresh with that. Diodoras, that was my favorite sneaker moment. Salute.